So we've kind of done an overview of where some of those problems are, right, and how we might fix some of those problems or address some of those issues. What we want to do now is kind of more practical of how to actually go about fixing and updating the project, okay? So first thing we need to look at is how do I actually get the language to change on an Android device, okay? If you're looking at my notes, there's an article here. It's actually called, it's under the Google support. It's Change Your Language on the Web. It's actually more of a thing for Chrome, but if you look at the middle tab and switch over to Android, it'll actually give you the instructions for how to do this on Android. So specifically here under the Android device, the place it's typically going to be is we're going to go into Settings, System, Languages Input, and then Language. So that's what we're going to do here. That's where you're going to find those instructions. They're not particularly the easiest thing if you Google around for them. They do vary a little bit depending on what device you're using, because the Settings app is very different from manufacturer to manufacturer, but I'll put that snip up here. Turn that off now. All right. So on my emulator, I'm going to follow those directions, and I'm going to go into Settings. Toss this back over here, and then I'm looking for Languages. Okay. Now you might notice, at least on my emulator, that there's actually nothing labeled Languages. But if you look really, really close, do you see under System? Kind of a little under there, gives you a hint as far as what's there. So as far as on the emulator is concerned, on this Pixel emulator, it's System, it is Languages in Input, and then I can go up to the top here, Languages, and you're going to get to a screen like this. Okay, so this is how the language selection looks on modern Android devices. Older Android devices, it did look differently. It used to be that on Android devices you can only pick one language. That turned out to have some problems for a bunch of users. So especially because maybe your app doesn't support your specific language, but maybe it supports another language that you can read. So what you can actually do here is as far as your language is concerned, you can pick more than one language, and then you basically order them based on what your preference is, right? So I can say, hey, I would like to have it in Spanish, but if it's not in Spanish, then give it to me in English or German or whatever it is. So I can actually add more than one language here. So right now it's just English, English United States. I'm going to go into Add Language. You're actually going to see that there's a bunch of options here. Now, under Suggested, you see it says Español Estados Unidos, right? If you kind of know how to read that, that's Spanish United States. Because it actually, a lot of languages it's more a locale. It's a combination of country plus language, because not everywhere has the same conventions. So for instance, you have Mexico and other parts of South America. They might follow certain date and time formats that are maybe not the same as Europe, right? So there are things where you also care not just about the language, but also the country. Okay, so I'm going to add this one in here, but you'll all notice all of them are none of these are in English. They're in the whatever language that they're in. Okay, so once I add it in, you're going to see I now have number 1 and number 2. If there's English, it's going to prefer English. If there's not English, then it's going to fall back to Spanish. Make sense? Okay. So in order to get this actually to switch over to Spanish, I need to just drag that up. So you can see there's the double bar. I'm going to drag that up. Spanish is now my preferred. It'll fall back to English. And you already can see the UI has started to switch over, right? So rather than saying add language down here, rather than say languages at the top, both of those, even the Android UI, has started to switch over. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Another thing to be wary of as well, going in through settings is kind of the most common way. For some users tend to switch languages pretty often, people that are more internationally minded. A lot of keyboards have a way to switch the language from the keyboard itself. So it might be, and this is where you have to be really careful. If I think this is the only way to do this, then I think, oh, well, I can only do this by leaving my app and coming back. But if you change it through a keyboard, you're actually staying in your same screen and changing the language while you're there. And that can have a different impact on your code. Does that make sense to everybody? So you can't necessarily guarantee or expect that the user's going to leave your app and come back. They might be changing the language while they're in your app. Okay, so that's the switch I need to make. If I try to run the application now, go back to Android Studio and try to run it, it's going to pop it up. Okay. You're going to see that you saw on that screen before there, the login activity. You know, you've got two pieces of text here, the newbie list, login. That's my text, right? That's not translated, as you can see. But remember, we are also using Google's login UI to implement the login. Okay, so you can see that here, these buttons have been translated. Okay, so the UI that we got built in with Firebase to implement the sign-in, all of that's already translated. It's already in a bunch of different languages. So as long as you're using that, you're getting all of those languages that Google's already supported. Okay. There's no guarantee that that is every language under the sun. So maybe there's a language out there that doesn't fit you, and at that point, you might have to potentially write your own sign-in process. But this part's already translated. Okay. So I'm going to go into email login. You can see it's already there. So get myself logged in, and okay. So you see that part's already taken care of. We don't have to worry about that part of the sign-in flow. Now I get into my application, okay, and we'll still see that everything is in English, right? So I haven't translated anything yet. But you can see out of the box, the one thing that we do get is that we do get that login process translated. Cool? Okay. So let's start with, now that we've got it in Spanish, now I can go through and start doing the actual translation process. Okay? What we're going to use is, in Android Studio, there's a window called the Translation Editor. We're going to use that to help speed up and simplify some of the process of translation. There is more than one way to get there. So in terms of working with Android Studio, I'm going to turn one of these lights off. So in terms of getting to the translation editor, one way you can do that is you can go down to res, values, strings.xml. If you have this popped open, you might or might not get a suggestion up at the top that says open editor. You see that about the translation editor? So that's one way you can get to it, is you just use that banner. Another way to get to it is to right click on strings.xml. And all the way at the bottom of the list, looks like a globe, you'll see Open Translation Editor. You can get to it either way. Okay? So even if that banner doesn't appear, you can still get to it that way. All right, that's going to pop up this. Okay? And basically what it's done, it's populated already in here everything that I've already extracted. So everything that's already in strings.xml is already in here. You can see the key. You can see the folder, you can see the default value. So default value is always going to be its English value, Okay? That's the default. Okay? So what we need to provide is a translation for other cultures, other languages. Okay? So what you want to do is go up to the top. There's a little globe button here with a plus called Add Locale. I'm going to click on that. And it's going to drop down and give you all of the possible locales that are available. Locale, just for reference, is both the country plus the language code. That's considered a locale. So what I want to do is go all the way down to the S's, looking for Spanish. And I'm almost there. There. You'll see that there's a bunch of options. So you can pick Spanish yes, okay? Spanish yes means you're supporting any country, it's just in Spanish, okay? There's also options in here where you can say like Spanish Argentina, and so you'd be doing ES and AR, right? Depending on what you pick there is going to give you a different file, a different variation of strings XML, okay? You might notice here, what's the abbreviation for Spanish?
ES.
It's ES. Okay, it's not SP. Why is that? Espanol. So a lot of times the two-letter abbreviation may not be aligned with the word that we use in English. So for instance, German is DE because it's Deutsch. So you're going to have those letters as things you have to check, and oftentimes I have to look those up. Now, once I've added that culture, you'll see that there's another column called Spanish ES. You'll also see that there is another strings file here. So now I have a strings XML with no abbreviation, no variation. That's my default. I also have a strings XML ES, which is for Spanish, right? So by default, if there's not a specific translation, it's going to use English, the default, and otherwise it's going to jump down here to use ES. Now, if I want to add other cultures, I can just go add them here. So let's say I want to add, I'm going to go find, quickly just add German and Japanese for the moment, just to show what this is going to look like. So German, add, and I'm going to go look for Japanese. Under J's. There. Japanese. So now if I look under values, you see that I have 4 different variants, and I've got 4 columns here for strings. Okay. Now, by default, anytime I add a new culture, this translation editor does copy over the app name, because oftentimes your application name is going to stay the same from language to language to language. This isn't universally true, but it's true for a lot of brands, right? So like Facebook might be Facebook everywhere, right? Nike might be Nike everywhere, right? So sometimes that doesn't change. In our case, I might want to change it if I'm just calling it movie list or game library. Those are definitely words that should be available in other cultures. Does that make sense? So that is a string I do want you to translate, not just the other strings, but I do want you to translate the name of the app as well. Okay? There is a checkbox in here that you can check called Untranslatable. If you check that, that's going to mark it as, hey, there's no way to translate this, just use the default version all the time, kind of thing. You're going to say there's no variation of it. But for these, we're going to say all of those are translatable. Okay. So the next question. Yep.
So with that,
yep.
So is it better to leave it that way, or try to translate it to something that like that's of similar or like close enough meaning?
What do you mean?
Well, I just know like because like obviously not every word translates over to other languages, but like there might be something that like is similar?
So most things will be translatable. Some things that aren't translatable are like names or places or things like that, right? So like there's no translation for St. Louis, right? Because
In Spanish, they call it San Luis.
yeah, I mean you might call it slightly different,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of things like that might not, you know, might have a translation in another language, but a lot of times that those names won't be translatable. Or technical terms like Wi-Fi and other things like that may not be Wi-Fi, USB, Ethernet. You might always use the anglicized name for those technical terms. Okay. So those cases, you know, there are specific cases where you would mark those untranslated. I don't think we have any of those in this app, but that could happen. Okay. So the question is, how do I fill in what goes into those other columns, right? I need to fill in that Spanish column with the Spanish translations. Okay? Usually what you do is you hire somebody to do that, right? Generally speaking, what you're going to do is you're going to give them some screenshots and this list of things that we have here of here's the ID and here's the value of it in English, and we're going to go have another company do that. Okay. In fact, once you get and deploy your apps to the Play Store, there's actually a way to do that from the Play Store console. Once you've published it to the Play Store, they do provide a way to get in touch and make it easier to get in touch with translation agencies if that's the way you're going. Okay. So for us, we don't have that flexibility. We want to go through this process, but we don't have a translator handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do kind of a sloppy translation, just using Google Translate, right? I'm just going to feed all those strings into Google Translate and take out whatever it tells me is the correct answer. It's going to be wrong. There's a lot of places it's going to give me the wrong translation, but it'll be something, and that's all I'm asking you for. I'm not asking you for manually to research all these translations. I'm just asking you feed it into Google Translate, spit that out, because that's not the part that your company really is going to pay you for anyway. They're really going to have to hire that out. The other thing to just be aware of, translation has a little bit of legal stuff around it. So even if you do have the skill of translating, generally speaking, your company's still going to have to hire out for it, because whoever you hire to do that has to be able to certify that those translations are correct, and you as a developer aren't going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to guarantee those translations. So, all right. So popping out to Google Translate. I think I had a link in here. Did I? Nope. I'll just have to go to translate.google.com, if I remember it is the domain name for that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down one by one, feed all of these strings into Google Translate, and just take the output. And so that's what I want you to do with your apps. I'm going to pause the recording here, let us kind of work through that, and then we'll resume once we've got those translated over. So if you look on my screen, I got to one of these, and this you're going to run into sometimes. You'll see if when I put in not implemented, you'll see it actually gives me two variations of it. One being the feminine and one being the masculine. Okay. Spanish is not my specialty. I don't know all of the differences between all of that. So that's one thing I'll just kind of leave up to you is to pick whichever one you have. It's worth mentioning that I had no Spanish in my education. I know how to speak some German, but I know nothing when it comes to Spanish. Pick whichever one. So I've done the translations that I had extracted previously. I know that's not everything, and I know that I think some people are still working on translation. But let me just show what happens right now. Okay. So when I run the app, remember my device is already set to Spanish, right? So when I fire it back up, you saw it on the logout screen, the login screen. You saw those two strings were changed over already. And if you look at this screen, you can see some of the things have been changed and some of them have not. If you paid really close attention to when it popped up, you probably saw that any of those toast messages, you see like vote saved, vote cleared, these things haven't been extracted, right? So there are going to be places in my code that I need to go over and translate. But the app will typically still run as long as you have a default, okay? It's worth mentioning if you don't have a default translation for something, your app will crash when it gets to that point, okay? So you always need to have a default translation for every string that you extract. If I just have Spanish and not English or neither, then that becomes an issue. So this helps with that. Rather than looking at the strings.xml files directly, it is helpful to look here to easier see things where you might be missing something on one side or the other. So there are still going to be places in here where I need to go and extract some strings that I haven't yet. Okay? So once I've done that first pass, right, I want to go test the application. I want to go looking for where are those places where it's translated and where are those places it's not translated. Okay? So the place I usually start when I'm looking through a project and to verify that it's translated is I actually usually start by going to the XML files, start with the layouts. And so I would start from the layouts, just working my way down. Okay? Because usually what happens, if you bring a layout up, you can just look for yellow highlights. Yellow highlights will indicate either there's a problem or there's a warning of some sort. A lot of times in the XML, there's just a warning for any places you've forgotten to translate. So I usually just go quickly look for yellows. Okay? I don't see any in this file, so I would go on to the next one. I'd go down to login. Okay? Looking again in the code view. Okay? No errors there. You can see this is already login button still already extracted. Next one would be movie details. And now if I look into movie details, I can start to see there are some issues, right? So first one here, you can kind of see the highlight on my image view. You see that? Okay. Now, it's not saying that there's a translation missing. What is it saying? It says there's missing a content description attribute, okay? Now, the content description attribute is there for accessibility. It's there for screen readers. But it is still written text, okay? So I need to add it. It will be used for screen readers, but it is something I need to translate. It just will never be seen visually. It's only going to be heard verbally, okay? So I want to add that content description. I can go in here. I can say set content description. It will add something down to the bottom. It'll say to do. Well, okay, that's nice that it added that field, that property, but that doesn't help me so much because I still need to fill in a value. Okay, so thinking about context. Okay, this is the banner image for the movie. What should I put as the spoken text for that banner? What would be the spoken text for that banner?
Something that describes what it is.
Describes what it is. Okay.
So it's banner image for the movie.
Banner image for the movie. It could be. I could say that. Oftentimes that image is going to have text in it. Okay. So oftentimes if I have an image with text in there, usually what I want to put there as a rule of thumb is oftentimes the text that's in the image, because screen readers can't see the image, right? So they're losing some of that text. Okay. But if we think about it, right? In this case, this is a special case. Okay. If I've got the banner image, what text is on the banner image?
The title of the movie.
Title of the movie. which if I look in my layout, if I go back to the design view, the thing right beneath it, I've got the banner image, and then right beneath it I have the movie title. Okay, so even though the movie title is probably going to be in that banner, I don't want to put it there as the content description, because otherwise the screen reader is going to read the movie title twice. So this is a special case. Does that make sense? This is a special case. So I would lean more on that and say this is the banner for the movie kind of thing. I wouldn't try to give descriptive text to explain what it looks like. I would just say banner for movie. Okay. Now, as soon as I put that in, that solves one problem. Now I have a content description, but I still need to extract it, and maybe I'm going to say movie banner description. Okay, so I'm going to extract that. That's going to end up being something I need to translate. As I keep going down, I'm going to see I have the same problem again with the screenshots. Okay. The screenshot probably not going to have any text in it, and honestly the screenshot, the main purpose of it is to convey what the game looks like, which, to be perfectly blunt, doesn't mean a lot to somebody who can't see. Oftentimes for something like this, I might set the content description to explicitly to blank. I don't know entirely how this works for the space of Android is concerned, if that means from the screen reader, if it skips it over. But oftentimes if I'm setting an alt for something like this on the web, I would set it to blank, because for the screen readers you might as well just pretend it's not there, because there's no real use to it. Okay, but so here, because I don't know the answer to that, I'm just going to call that screenshot 1. And this is going to be content description, screenshot 2, screenshot 3, so I'll give those descriptions: screenshot 1, screenshot 2, screenshot 3, and I'm going to extract all of those. So part of the point I'm trying to get at here is you have to look for not just issues that are translation issues where you're missing a translated string. You also have to look for some of these other things where you're missing a content description, because those are things that you need to add the field and then translate it as well. So there's a kind of two-step process for those. Okay, so I've gone through here. You might notice some of these, like I've said, tools text, those don't give me that warning because it's only in the designer, doesn't really need to be translated. Okay. Let me go on to the next one, which would be my scroll view for this. Those are already translated. Item movie. Again, I've got another image view. And this would be like movie or thumbnail for movie. And so put that in. Movie, thumbnail, description. I've got image button, and so this one, content description, this one is upvote. which I think I already have a string for upvote. So some of the times you'll go through here and you might realize, oh, I think I already have that. And I might go over and look at what I have, but I don't think that this one is actually one I've translated yet. So it's a new one. All right, so Alt Enter, extract string, upvote, and this one's going to be downvote. Image view, Alt Enter, content description. This is now. This one's interesting. Okay, so for these genre icons, pay attention here. I don't want to put these as genre 1, 2, and 3. Why do I say that?
Because they get populated from data from the database.
Right. So I'd really want them to say like action and drama, romance, etc. Right? So it actually doesn't make a lot of sense for me to set a content description here when it needs to be kind of programmatically set, right? So you're going to get into some of these cases where you need to programmatically set that particular text. So if I take some guidance from here, I'm going to go look at where I'm setting that image, which was namely in the adapter. So if I go to movie list adapter, and I scroll down here, okay. So what I've already done is I'm already programmatically setting the icons. I also need to programmatically set the description for those icons. So oftentimes, if you're setting an image resource programmatically, you should generally set the content description at the same time. If I'm changing the icon, we're changing it for sighted users. We also need to change the text for visually impaired users at the same time to keep those things in sync. So in here, anywhere I'm setting that, vh.genre icons, icon index, set content description, and I want to set it to a string resource, so r.string, and I need an actual string for that. So I'm going to go into, I think if I write it first and then extract it, so this would be error, or it would be unknown genre. I could do that. The other thing I could do here is I could actually set the particular genre that it is. The problem with putting that key in then is I can't translate it. So I guess I need to do this. So unknown genre. Okay. Sometimes when I extract, you'll see it has switched over to context, get string, etc. Sometimes I can take that out, and so I will. Can I do that here? I don't know that I can do that here. Set content. Nope. So there's not a way to set it from there. Okay. So it is going to be that long way. So back down here, set content description. And so this is going to be action. And I'm just going to do that for all of my genres, or in your case it would be your consoles. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that over. This is action. It's comedy. Comedy. I'll enter extract resource. This is going to be comedy genre. And this one is romance. Okay. So programmatically, those are being set now, which is good. Okay. So that's where I'm going to set those. I could go back here. I could set a content description on them anyway, at least to get the error gone. So I might set this still to genre 1, etc. It's just the thing to be aware of is oftentimes you do need to go make a code change. And so usually I want to do that code change first before I get rid of the error, so I just have that memory of what I need to do. And maybe I'll call this genre icon instead. Or genre. No, I'll still do genre 1. Genre 1, 2, 3. And in my strings, I'll create those manually. Genre 1, 2. So I was down to the item movie layout. I would go down to my review, again at the code view. No highlights there, so that's good. Movie list. Nothing popping up. User list. And I do have users here. Now I do think I have that extracted already. So R string users, so I can use a string that I've already extracted. Okay. So I should now have everything extracted from all my layouts. Okay, so I've added content descriptions everywhere where I have image views or image buttons, and I've extracted any strings that were outstanding. Okay. So that's the part I want you to go through now. Make sure you get all those XMLs updated. And we'll go on to the next piece. If you do get that done, you can go ahead and start building in translations for those extra strings. So the first thing we did, remember, is we started by adding the Spanish as a culture. Right? We started by translating all the strings that we've already taken care of extracted. Step 2 was we started going through all of the XML files, looking for warnings, resolving those, and then we translate all of those. Okay. Once we've done that, we also have strings in the code which we may need to translate. Okay. So right now, if I look at my home screen, just kind of testing where we're at, you're going to see that most of the things on this screen have been translated, right? My options up here, these are generated programmatically, but I already previously set those up. I previously extracted those. These things are these are programmatically, I've already set those up. But you can, and these are fine, right? What's still missing, things you actively see on the screen, is you can see the names of the movies have not been translated, as well as the directors, okay? So that's coming from the database data, right? I don't want to tackle the database data yet, okay? So usually what I'm looking for after I finish the XML problems, I want to fix all of the Java problems, okay? And so where I can see one of those Java problems is anytime I click this, right? Okay, anytime I click that, you can see the thumbnail popping up, and that thumbnail is still appearing in English. Okay? So that's one of the things, the next things we want to talk about. Okay? Before I do that, I do want to do a quick look through, right? So oftentimes, just like with you can look through the XML, oftentimes you can look through the Java code and it will also highlight issues there. Now, that's not a for sure guaranteed. It's pretty much in the XML, it will always tell you if you need to translate it, but there's a lot of cases in the Java code where there might be a string that you need to translate, but it doesn't know one way or the other. So some things it will know, so if you're saying set text, if you're showing something that it knows as being a UI element, it might give you that tooltip and tell you that it needs to be translated. But if it doesn't know that it's going to be in the UI, for instance, if it's going to be in a live data, it won't give you that warning. Okay. So usually what I do is I'm going to just start going through and looking for strings, right, in my code and see wherever those occur. Now, the problem with finding those, right, I could potentially look for those and just kind of gloss through and look for green, right? If I say all my comments are green, I can kind of look for green. Okay, that can be a little bit of a faulty process. So what I might want to do is pop up Control F and look for quotes, for instance, right? And that would actually be a more reliable way to find some of these things. So if I look for quotes, okay, I'm going to find a few strings. Okay, a fair forewarning here: not everything needs to be translated. Just because it's a string doesn't mean it's necessarily needs to be translated. If it's going to be shown to the user, it does. If it's not going to be shown to the user, then it doesn't need to. And by user, I mean customer, right? So in this case, this line 88, I don't need to translate that. There's no point in me doing that because it's just a log message. So log messages are fine. Keep your log messages in English. Cool. What about line 95? Okay, again, log message, we're fine, right? So usually I'm looking for quotes, and I'm going to find those things and I'm going to extract them. So let me just check real quick if there's anything in my activities that still needs to be extracted. Look for quote, jump down, okay. Again, I've got logs, I've got logs, I've got logs. This one. Should I extract those strings? Yay or nay?
No, because those are going into the server.
Right. Where are they going to? They are the names of database fields. They're the names of database fields. So I don't want to translate those because then I would have like Spanish names in my database field. And so then based on, you know, if that would be then based on what language the user is in, it would select a different database field. I don't want to do that, right? So you do have to be careful about what you translate and what you don't translate, right? So this would actually be a problem if I translated that. It would create issues, okay? So those are names of fields. I don't translate those. This is a name of collection. I'm not going to translate that. Again, and I've got log messages. So, you know, you want to kind of, that's usually the good way to start is just by looking for quotes. You usually have to dig a little bit further to just see what things to translate and what things not. So that you can't do as blindly as looking at the XML. So anything else? Just checking here. Similarly, I'm going to look at movie details. Extras. Are extras visible to the user? No. So those can change. Those can stay. So next up would be the set text. Do I need to translate line 125?
Was it previously empty like that?
Yeah, it was already that.
Okay, so then not the same reason why.
So I don't really need to do it here because not because it's not visible to the user. This is visible to the user, but blank is the same in every language. Right? Empty string is the same in every language, so there's no point in extracting that blank. So I wouldn't extract that one. Okay. So it's a bit of a give and take. That's part of what I want to make sure that you're paying attention to here, is it does depend on what you're dealing with, to pay attention to it. So logs, again, logs. All right, now here's one. I did find one. That's a snack bar. Okay, so that is going to be visible to the user. So I do need to extract that. So I would do Alt-Enter here. And did it pull it out? I don't know, it pulled it out. Alt-Enter, there I was. I had to be in the middle. So movie, or error, I might say error, movie not found. And this would be error, movie has no name. Okay, what about this? What about line 174? You're shaking your head. Why?
There's nothing there to translate.
Okay. Why not?
Because movie names are proper nouns and a release here is just a number.
Yeah, and I would translate the name differently. Now, the year is a special case. Remember, numbers are one of those things that is culturally different. Okay? But a year, it's 4 digits. It usually doesn't fit into a lot of those cases. Like, we don't have a decimal point. We don't usually have a thousand separator. So it's usually safe to go ahead and just leave that one alone and say, okay, it's just the year, so we're safe. If it was like a month and a date, then I need to be extra careful, right? Then I would need to use like a date formatter, but because I'm just using the year, it's fine. What about this? 177. Translate it? Don't translate it?
That's what goes into your share, right?
Yeah, it goes into my share. Translate it or not?
I would say do it.
So do I hear a yes and a no?
Yes.
Okay, why do I need to translate it?
In case you send it to somebody else who speaks Spanish too.
Yeah. So, but there's a gotcha here. Do I want to translate the whole thing? No. Okay. Notice that I only want to translate the message up here that says, check out this movie. I don't want to translate the second part that's down here, which is the name of the movie and the URL. The URL is the same in every language. Okay? So all I need to translate is that first line. So that's the only part I'm going to extract. So extract string resource, and maybe I would say something like share game prefix, or I could say, or share game message probably is fine. So it's going to flip it over like this. So the first part's translated and the second half is not. Cool? Okay. Text plain, not going to translate that, needs to say there. Movie, those things definitely, these things both not going to be shown to the user. We're dealing with URLs, those things do not need to be translated. Looking at movie list. Okay, So if I start from the top, work my way down, okay. Log message, nope. Log message, nope. Log message, log message. Okay, all of our activities have been checked. There's still other classes, obviously, I would need to go through, but I hope that's enough to kind of understand the process. So all of your UI classes, you're going to have to go through and look for any strings you have and determine should it be translated or not. Okay. That there's not an easy fix or an easy way to just get all of those things. Okay.